Aaron, I think the best way to start is to talk about our favorite, or I should just say our most substantial, Mace Windu moments in Star Wars.
Okay.
Now, how much of a stickler are you for canon versus non-canon?
Canon versus non-canon?
I have one on here that's like non-canon, but I also researched a way that I can sneak it in if you're going to be a stickler.
Is it from Clone Wars?
Yes.
But a different Clone Wars than what I would think of?
Yes.
I did not write it down.
Okay.
It is a favorite moment of mine. Do we want to talk about that one now?
Yeah, we'll go right into it. I mean, if I'm allowed to put it on my list, it's going up pretty high.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But if we're more of like an alternate thing.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm talking about the Battle of Dantooine from Star Wars Clone Wars, not the Clone Wars, right?
Sure. Gindi.
The Gindi series, the animation. Back in the day, we had an entire episode, or episodes, I should say, with no dialogue.
That was like 2004, 3?
2004.
It was like early 2000s.
It was right before. Maybe Volume 2 was 2004, and that was 2002 or 3 or whatever. But yeah,
it's been a while.
It aired on Cartoon Network for 5 minutes at a time. But the Dantooine episodes of Mace Windu, where he literally takes apart an entire battle droid army by himself.
With his hands and
With
stuff,
his
right?
hands.
He's like elbowing him.
He
he's
loses his
punching
lightsaber.
him. Yeah.
But if we want to, there is a thing here that says, I had to look it up, because in Brain Invaders, which was a Geonosis arc Clone Wars episode, there is a passing mention of the episode that we're talking about, of Clone Wars, that depicts Mace fighting a droid army single-handedly at the Battle of Dantooine. So they do mention it kind of in reference. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I don't think it happened the exact same way in that medium versus the other medium, but it's such an amazing part that when I think of Mace Windu, I kind of think of that first, honestly.
Gotcha.
I love that. Mace is an interesting character. He is so often a reflection of other characters, especially I feel like he's really taken on the sentiment of like the Jedi are flawed and they're too strict. And I feel like Mace is like at the forefront of that, right?
The strict
Jedi. Which, like when you think about his utilization in the, I don't know if this is on your list or not, but the Tales of the Jedi episode with Dooku, like we kind of have him opposed to Dooku. Dooku's our Sith Lord, but Mace is like almost the not antagonist, but like he's like an antagonistic force in there. Like he gets Dooku's seat, and he treats these people this way, the way the Republic would, which disenfranchises Dooku in a way that you might say, like, I get it.
Yeah, it made me understand Dooku much better, yeah.
So, like, going through this list, it was kind of tough for me to find, like, my favorite Mace Windu stuff, just because I feel like his utilization doesn't make him my favorite character by far.
Sure.
But he has some great moments, and I want to talk about those today.
Gotcha.
So, my honorable mention will be the Battle of Dantooine.
Okay. I'll hold on a little bit for one of my favorite ones, I suppose, then.
Okay.
But I think it can relate really well with that one.
Gotcha. So we're going to try to go over our top 5.
All right. I'm going to start with just one of the things I always think of with Mace Windu. I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but it's something I just think of, which is the party's over.
This party's over.
Yeah. I think about him showing up and saying that, and I love that. Like, I think his the
swagger.
Yeah, I guess it's swagger. I'm trying to think of what the word is.
Sam Jackson-ness.
Yeah, when Mace is very Sam Jackson. When he shows up and he's just like, you're done with this. Party's over. And there's a few of these that I think, at least one more, where it's about him showing up and him being just Mace Windu, or him being like Sam Jackson kind of thing too.
I mean, if it wasn't played by Sam Jackson, he might have a lot more haters than he has.
Maybe.
There's a lot of charisma in that guy.
Sure.
Yeah.
But like you said too, the way he plays a Jedi is very strict to the rules, and sometimes, like, I think some of the favorite Jedis are usually the ones that are a little bit more laxed and a little bit more, like Count Dooku, and seeing him wanting to care for the people versus like, no, this is what the Republic wants and this is what we should do. It's that idea of like the Jedi should be for all the people, not just for the Republic, whereas Mace falls into that like, no, we have our rules and our guidelines and we must do exactly what they are, and we are part of the Republic.
Sure.
So... yeah,
but
I could see him being disliked more than he maybe is, but
you can't help but like, this party's over. You can't be like, Sam Jackson. Stab him.
Now, I don't know if the next part of that is on your list at all or anything.
I mean, a scene following that is on my list. Yeah, I can make that my number 5.
Make that your number 5?
My number 5 is Mace versus Jango. It's not the longest fight. It's a little bit longer in the extended scene. But it's funny. When you compare Jango Fett in Episode 2's fight with Obi-Wan to Mace, like you almost are like power scaling a little bit. It's like Obi-Wan has this much of a time fighting Jango, and Mace, the second baddest dude in the galaxy, bam, 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 takes him out. But we also get to see
he didn't
Jango,
get a jetpack. He lost a jetpack
Jango
early
loses
on.
everything that makes him Mando other than his armor. Now, I think newer fans might be like, why can't he just block with his Beskar? But that wasn't a thing when we watched that back in the day. So I don't even really think about it anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, his execution of Jango Fett it's cold, I feel like. It's calculated.
I wish it was longer. Yeah. I do wish it was longer. It's part of why I was like, I don't know, do I want to put it on this list or do I not want to put it on this list? Because there's that, and also another thing where I'm like, I don't know that I really loved these moments with him too much. But it continues the story that then gives you Boba Fett's vengeance story in Clone Wars, which is a real fun arc.
It is. I mean, I was almost I love that arc so much. I was almost tempted to put something about it on my list, but that's kind of ultimately a Boba Fett moment. I mean, Mace is there. I mean, I love the helmet on top of the bomb.
Yeah.
Anakin, no! And he pulls Anakin out of the way. Like, that's good stuff. And Mace has his sweet droid in that arc. That's like gold and purple.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It gets blown up, unfortunately. But it's cool.
It's like a better Goldie.
Yeah, it's like a better Goldie. But, so I was kind of tempted of putting that in there. But, yeah, I often think of his destruction of Jango Fett in front of Jango's son. Which I guess he knew he was there because he was up there, like, on the dais talking.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah. No, the shot there of him holding the helmet is so sad.
Yeah. Very sad.
Well, then, I think my next one that I want to pick is probably going to be the bridge over Ryloth. Like, there's the Ryloth arc where they're trying to save and liberate Ryloth.
Bridge
and
over Ryloth.
I think there's a lot of fun Mace Windu moments, and it's a good story with them and Cham, but getting across the bridge, like that moment there, and then he has to like get those couple jumps at the end and stuff.
Well, I love the plan. The two clone troopers, like it's turning off.
Yep.
All the sound goes away and the music, and it's just quiet. And I love. There's one part in that I love where he's climbing up the stamp battle droid rider.
Yeah.
And like, fucking, he looks right at his face and like gives us like this look that I've always like, why are you doing that? But it's chilling as well. I love that moment.
Yeah. So I think getting a chance to actually free Ryloth, like you're finally taking out what was it, Tambor, right? I think
Tambor,
it was who was in that, and just getting that chance to do that, but also it's just a cool moment. It's a cool idea. It's clever when it's like, well, they check everything. Yeah. What do we do?
No, I mean that silent ascension out of the hole, and then he brings the other two clone troopers up. That's actually my number 1.
Oh, is it?
I love it so much. But I'll be able to switch to other moments. There's a lot of moments in that one that I'll be able to highlight.
Gotcha.
Because I love that moment so much. That's a good one. That's your 4?
Yeah, it is. Because the next 2 I like more than that moment.
Okay, gotcha.
Though you're right about like the coolness of just it gets quiet. We take away the music. We take away everything, and it's Mace and his ascension.
Like, I like to think like, when other Jedi do their Jedi things, like in their hearing, no, but when Mace does it, it's cold and it's calculated and it's silent and he does what he needs to do. I think it works really well.
Yeah.
And probably one of the highlights of season 1 of the Clone Wars. Yeah.
And you get to learn more about Cham, like about Syndulla,
yeah.
which then comes back, I think, later on in, later series.
If you don't get Cham, you probably don't get the connection with Hera and Chopper and all that stuff. Yeah. Yep. And then you have the other connection of Mace and Depa and Kanan, right? Mm-hmm. So very integral in there. I mean, he's Ezra's like sire or one of his Jedi ancestors in a way with the direct lineage of pupils. So
yeah.
Okay. So I will shift over to. People might not like this choice, but I actually quite like the "I'm sorry, citizen."
To Ahsoka?
To Ahsoka.
I mean, it goes with his strict.
It does.
Here are the lines
Yeah.
that we don't cross.
And I think when I first heard it, like it immediately rubs me the wrong way. And
Sure.
You want to,
just like, oh man,
you want to blame Mace in that regard and stuff, but like, she is at that point talking about like, what do you mean about Palpatine? And he's like, hey, citizen, this is stuff for the council to know, not you. Like in a way, he's almost kind of protecting her. Like, if people knew that we had this suspicion that Palpatine is doing things wrong, like that puts a target on you. So maybe by like pushing her away and calling her citizen, it's kind of a way of like shielding her from that. Maybe. When I rewatched that scene this week, I don't know, that kind of like went into my head and I couldn't get out of it.
Really?
Yeah, because I did find myself, especially after reading the book that we're gonna be talking about, like really thinking about Mace Windu and who he is as a Jedi, as opposed to like what he means for other characters in this story.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so the I'm Sorry Citizen one, I have that there on my list because I think about it often. I bring it up a lot, Yeah, I would say that's one of the most thought-provoking Mace Windu moments.
Okay.
Mace doesn't really get a whole lot, especially in something like in the prequels, and he's kind of just
he's not in
sometimes. But Clone Wars, I think, brings really interesting things for him. But I thought it was important to put on my list. Like, one of the reasons that he is so notable. And I think that kind of line kind of sums it up. Like, I think he means very well with it, but we don't take it that way. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe he does. Yeah, we never get into his mind very often to get an idea of what he's thinking and why he does the things he does, right? Like,
I mean, until we got into this book, and you're kind of like, you're kind of talking about Mace, how he is and how he thinks of himself, and that kind of put me into a mindset of wanting to not just think about what the movie was showing me, but what the character. I learned about the character and how I could reflect that into the movie.
I'd be interested to see this take place, like, not this, but like seeing a story of Mace later into the trilogy, since this one takes place earlier on, before the Clone Wars and that kind of stuff too. But and it's a lot of it. Anyway, we can talk about that more later, I guess. But I don't have a specific moment, but it's from a Clone Wars arc.
Okay.
Which is the I think it's the Disappeared arc.
Yeah.
But it's Mace with the Bardotans.
Yeah, the Disappeared.
But my favorite thing about
the
the Disappeared, right. And my favorite thing about it is that you have a series or arc that is about Mace and Jar Jar working together, and it's two characters. Like after you watch episode 1, you're like, well, those two.
I think
they're not going to get along.
I think
they're
it's
not
one of
do
the
anything.
best characters you can put Jar Jar with.
I love pairing them together, and that's why I'm like, I don't know what moment I want to pick, but I loved that arc and those two together. And like whenever he like caught tied up, I was like, help, Mace is coming up trying to save him and stuff, and like I love it.
It's so Indiana Jones.
It has the Indiana Jones feel. It also ties in with like Talzin and stuff too, right? Like all that, like trying to gather all the Force and stuff to get like a revival and. Like, it has a lot of stuff from a lot of characters, and I like where it goes. But, it has so many different, like, things in it. And my best part about it is just Mace and Jar Jar. Yeah. And, like, them going into that maze, and then Jar Jar, like, vanishes. Like, there's just moments of it's funny, I think more so because Mace is there. And he's always so
I agree.
rigid and stoic. And
he's like, the best straight man for this goofy humor to bounce off of. Yeah. Man, we have a lot of crossover on our list.
Do we?
That one's also on there, but I think specifically I go for the Mace versus Mother Talzin fight.
Gotcha.
I love that fight. I think when I first watched it, I was kind of just so shocked that Talzin had a melee sword.
Yeah.
We've never seen her do anything like that before. And it's honestly not even the sword fight or whatever that gets me. I love Mace's retort when she talks about like you're no match against my magic, and he's like, magic is merely an illusion. It means nothing. Like this space monk that can float objects and like see the future is going like, that's bullcrap.
Yeah, right.
But I'm like pretty sure it wasn't. Pretty sure Dooku like was spilling out his innards.
Hey,
pretty sure
he had boils growing on him and stuff.
Pretty sure Savage Opress is a Hulk.
Yeah,
like, I don't know how illusionary.
We created new legs for Maul.
Yeah. But Mace believes it, and thus he has the confidence to overcome.
Yeah.
And he's not scared, and he's not afraid of it. So that's good for him.
Okay.
But yeah, I do. And the Blade of Talzin is the same thing, I think, that we see Morgan Elsbeth use against Ahsoka.
Okay.
Yep.
That's cool.
So that was The Disappeared.
The
That was
Disappeared,
season
yeah.
6 of the Clone Wars. Definitely agree that one's good.
Now, I only really have one more on my list, which is, I think, tied really well to the first thing we talked about from you.
Okay.
And I don't know, it might be on your list, it might not be, but you're talking about the Gindi series, and like a little thing about like Mace and just the Battle of Dantooine and all the droids he takes out.
Sure.
I really like the Anaxis. It's on Anaxis. Like Mace Windu, I don't think is a huge part of most of the Anaxis story in the last season.
Yeah.
But when he shows up, when they're taking out like everybody and everything, he lands among those droids.
Him and Obi-Wan.
And I love that he's like, I have dismantled like over 100,000 of you, and like he's like trying to instill like fear in these battle droids, which may or may not work. But I love like it's also kind of like the party's over kind of moment.
It is.
I love him landing there, and he's like talking about that. Like I was like, you know what? If this is tied to the Gindi thing or another nod to that, like he took out a lot, and he did like a huge blast, and he's punching things with his hands. But
dude, that one time where he like takes all the screws out, and the guy the battle droid just falls apart, and then he uses it as shrapnel to take out others. So cool.
But he's like, I've single-handedly dismantled over 100,000 of you, and I'm like, throughout the whole war, I believe that he probably did.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe other Jedi did as well, but him specifically thinking about the Gindi thing.
Okay.
I like that moment because like it could nod to that, but he just the fear he's trying to instill on droids, I thought was great.
Yeah.
It just he has a great presence when he shows up. I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, that one's not on mine, so I'm good. I wanted to try to find something from Star Wars Shatterpoint.
It's been so long since I've read that one.
I mean, I love Shatterpoint. I love Depa's madness in that, and the jungle and everything. But it's not canon.
Sure.
The book that we're about ready to review is kind of not a replacement, but similar grounds of like trying to do a character study of this character. But I can shift it to the same episode you're talking about of Ryloth, where we get to see Mace Windu literally use Shatterpoint on the tank. Remember,
okay.
like he cuts a piece out of the glass or whatever using the Force. I think I can kind of like bring all my love for the Shatterpoint novel and then point at that Clone Wars canon moment, because for me, I bring all of that with it.
Okay.
And it's also just a really, really cool moment in a battle.
Yeah.
To be able to just touch glass and it shatters like that, I think it's one of the coolest things that's not super developed with Mace Windu. So,
is the Shatterpoint or
the Shatterpoint?
Yeah,
just the idea,
especially in canon.
It gets referenced a lot. I think books are more likely to talk about it, but it's just I don't think that exists in the prequels, really. But yeah, the Shatterpoint thing. I'll just smuggle that in there with that.
Okay. No, I read that one a long time ago, and there's little parts that I remember some with it, but there's a lot of things that I'm like, man, I need to reread it sometime.
Shatterpoint would be a fun one to reread. I especially love the bad guy in it, though I can't remember his name right now, but he used like sharp shields. I just always loved the idea when they fought. This guy aggressively uses a shield, and this guy defensively uses a sword.
Yep. I keep thinking of shields with it, and I can't remember who it was that had it, but I think of shields and swords because of that one. So.
Okay, well, so that kind of shift from the bridge there. I also really love in that arc when Mace is like, it's after the bridge and he's going down. They're making their way into the compound there, and like all of these battle droids are firing, and he takes them out with the force push, and then a tank turns around and it's coming for him, and you're like, you can't force push a tank, but he force pushes this big like steel plate and it smashes the tank. I just always loved how he just kind of like that. So special shout out for that one. But my last one, which isn't necessarily my number one, but I've kind of we went all over my list pretty much at this point. This is gonna be it's interesting because I do not like Mace versus Palpatine. I think it should be one of the best fights in the.
I specifically left that off my list because I'm like, overall, I really don't love this moment.
I love the Senate will decide your fate. I love all the lines and I love the stuff. It's just the actual things that are happening. The fight itself just leaves me wanting. Mm-hmm. But, and again, I don't know if this is necessarily present in the movie as opposed to me reading into it. But when you compare, because Mace has to deal with Palpatine's lightning. We don't see a lot of people deal with Palpatine's lightning, but Mace is one of the only ones that it doesn't affect him at all, right? And you could say, like, well, he has a lightsaber.
Yeah.
But Obi-Wan, he absorbs Dooku's lightning in Episode 2, whereas Mace can literally, like, redirect it.
Yeah, he's like pointing it back at him.
It wasn't really until I was reading the book and remembering Vapad, which is his version of Form 7 that he kind of created to channel darkness and redirect it, that I was going like, there's kind of an interesting parallel if you do take, Obi-Wan's absorption of lightning. Mace uses Vipod, a lightsaber form, to redirect the dark side. And I'm like, that's kind of an interesting thing. I don't think that was in Lucas's mind.
No.
But that's the great thing about Star Wars. It doesn't need to be.
Sure.
It's now in the great tapestry
it's
of
like
mythology.
That's why it messes with his face.
Yeah.
He's shooting it back at him. And
I
getting...
kind of always thought that would be interesting. Like he's pushing back, you are the traitor, that type of thing. But I like the idea that, because I got to admit, like, I don't love the idea of Vapad and channeling your darkness. Like, I try to stay as far away from the idea of Grey Jedi as possible, just because I just don't think it works very well. But this is probably the one that I'm closest enough to accept. The idea of channeling the dark side, using it in a positive way. So I just feel like once you start down the dark side, forever dominates your destiny, that type of thing. But Mace is kind of meant to be a character, at least in the greater Star Wars universe, expanded Star Wars universe, that can like flirt with it and not let it go too crazy. But I never really thought I saw that in the movies ever, or the intention of Lucas when he created the character. Except now I'm kind of reading into it because Star Wars has taught me.
There's been new things that have kind of been like,
I think you could say like, well, maybe Dooku and Palpatine's lightning is just one's far more powerful, so this one can get absorbed, but this one
doesn't Yoda, like, he doesn't have a lightsaber, but doesn't he just take Dooku's and like
he at one point he like crushes it and another he throws it back.
I guess that's true. He does.
But he does the same thing with Palpatine as well. He doesn't necessarily push it back. They're kind of just like
he kind of just stopping it
in Episode 3. Yeah. But yeah, no, I always just kind of like that. Obi-Wan just kind of like puts his lightsaber up. Dooku's like, oh, I guess that doesn't work. Which I always kind of thought like, man, that's a good idea the Jedi had. Cause I imagine like when there's 1,000 Sith Lords,
Luke really shouldn't have thrown away that saber and been like, father, like I'm like my father, He should have kept that thing.
Yeah, he only had a little bit of time with Obi-Wan, to learn.
That's true.
But you figure it's like, hey, I'm going to, confront Vader and the Emperor's going to be there. You figure Yoda or Obi-Wan would be like,
hey, hold on that lightsaber.
Hold on that lightsaber, man.
Hey, he'll shoot lightning. Well, last time I fought him, he shot lightning at me. You know what I mean? So like maybe like use your saber for that.
Like Obi-Wan, like this weapon is your life. He sees him throw it.
Dang it.
But that would only be the second time Luke throws away the lightsaber will piss people off. I guess that was the first. The second one, people would be much more upset.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I put that on my list just because I like that it's changed my opinion a little bit of stuff that's happening in that fight.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
there's
little things in there. I'm like, if you just change this, this, and this, I think it'd be a lot better. But
I was thinking about it, and I was like, I love that. Palpatine is like it was a lot of the fight, like them coming in. I'm like, oh, good, and it feels like I'm building up to a cool moment. And like you have some really good fights in Episode 3. And I wish I felt the same about this one, even if it was shorter. Like it didn't have to be like Anakin and Obi-Wan or anything. Sure. But I felt like we cut to it, and it's like dead, dead. And then I never felt like, okay, now we're getting to these two. Mace Windu is a great fighter, right? And I
know
I never felt like it hit the high I wanted it to.
Like I understand what they're trying to do. Like Lucas is kind of a power scaler where he's like, look, I cut these guys down quick to show you how good he is. It's like, yeah, but like I don't feel it. I feel like that guy was so slow. I mean, the Palpatine tornado is cool, But I feel like there's a moment where Palpatine's like, and gets you. So, yeah.
But nah, I don't know. But no, there's a lot of other really good Mace moments and stuff too. After the book, I'm gonna write it down. There's a question I want to ask after the book.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's interesting going through because I generally like Mace Windu. I mean he is unique in that he's one of the only purple lightsaber wielders that we have. But when I was going through like, okay, I'm going to write down every scene I can think of with Mace Windu. Like so many of them is just like, dick, not cool, didn't like that part.
Yep.
You know,
Complain about Anakin.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, he guessed cup ship like real good. Like, give him some credit.
Yep.
You know,
Speeder.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's some of our moments that we like with
Yeah.
Mace Windu, and just
Let
kind of
us
getting
know
a chance to talk about him.
And let us know if you guys had any favorite Mace Windu moments that
Yes.
was not on our list.
Yes, I was trying to think of everything I could, and I'm sure there's things I've forgotten. There's
Actually,
also
it says the Senate will decide your fate, motherfucker.
there's also a lot of comic stuff, I'm sure, that
Oh.
I'm not familiar with, that I haven't
Yeah.
seen, and I'm sure he's in some doing some cool stuff too. But
I certainly haven't seen much in terms of canon comic stuff. I mean, he was briefly in Son of Dathomir, but not much. But I remember the not Old Republic, the Republic comic series had a lot of Mace Windu, and I greatly enjoyed him in there. But there's really nothing left over from that stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.